Good afternoon, everyone here at the video and also online streaming channel. Welcome to TechX Talk Series. This event is really special because it is the first time that we do in-person meeting, tech meetup, co-host with SCB TechX, Atato, S10, and also the 7 that gave us the avenue today. Thank you. Yeah. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Aksnes. Currently, I am Innovation Program Manager at SCB TechX. I will be moderator today for panel discussion today. Yeah. For today's agenda, there are two main sections that we will discuss. First is about the future of FinTech in Web 3. That will be the panel discussion, and after that, we will do the Q&A. The people here at the video can ask the question by raising your hand, and then we give the microphone to you guys. And the second session will be like an introduction of the F10 incubator program. Yeah, okay. And I think most of the audience here and also live streaming know about our panelists already, but maybe let our panelists do quick 1 minute introduction of themselves and their background. And then we will start our discussion topic. Yeah, let's start with them.
Hi, can you go for it? Hi everyone, my name is Andre. I run the innovation lab in SCB TechX, and I think actually I run the dev advocacy for TechX. I have a long background in enterprise software. Got bored of it, thought doing innovation and cool stuff is more interesting. So I have a very extensive tech background. Used to work with a lot of cloud technologies, etc. So to this day, and a lot of the focus now in SCB TechX is really trying to push, I think, the new paradigm for technology. I think for not just the bank itself, but I think for all of the subsidiaries and the ESG group. So yeah.
Hi, my name is Jonas. I'm the head of F10 Incubator in Singapore. And we are really a global innovation network based out of Singapore, Switzerland, and Spain. I'm really glad to be in Thailand now for the first time since COVID. And yeah, we'll show you guys more about what we do, but we are working with startups and corporates, bringing them together and running different kinds of programs.
All right, hi. Sorry, hello. Yes, so hi, I'm Jostein Aksnes. I'm the CEO of 7 Software. I also have an engineering background. I worked with enterprise software for the last 15 years, living in Thailand for the last 12. Very passionate about building software and delivering products for our clients. Primarily working with bigger enterprise clients here in Thailand as well as regional and in Europe.
Thanks, good afternoon everyone. My name is Max. I'm the co-founder of Atato. My background is actually in the finance. I used to be managing a director of a trading firm for more than 12 years. And in 2012, in a bar in Bangkok, actually, I heard about Bitcoin and tried it. And I fell in love with it. It was a completely different space at that time. We were like 4 or 5 anarchists in a bar. It's a completely different space now. We are hosted by a bank, SCB TechX. And Atato, what we do, actually we offer custody services for businesses. So, when you're on the cryptocurrencies, we basically provide the software to secure and manage the cryptocurrencies. So thanks, Andre, for the invitation.
Yeah, I think today we'll get the great insight for because your background is very great for the Web3 and also the blockchains. Yeah. So let's start a bit for before we go into the question. I think that. Sorry about that, it's a technical issue. Let's continue with the currently that we know that the fintech landscape has been dynamic over the past few years. We can see that the new player for the financial industry become to offer newer, more flexible and attractive products to their users. For example, Central Retail gives employees to use their own digital currency to buy products or service from partners under them. Also that the more book and become with the new with the cryptocurrency. As of the trend, the newer technologies start to flourish in the market. Companies are slowly turning their eye towards products that focus on digital ownership, which implies of the case for digital assets because of the shift. The nature of gravity to explore and innovate product on blockchain rapidly to achieve more scale. So that's why become the topic of our panel discussion today. For the first question, I think we will go to the Andre. Consider that SCB TechX is in the unique proposition to serve financial institutions from a technology and innovation perspective. What makes a successful fintech company and product line? What do you think about that?
I got a lot of thoughts about that. I think let's break that question down a little bit, right? What makes actually like a successful fintech, and what actually makes successful products? I think they're two very different things, right? If we think about what successful products are today, products tend to follow whatever people want, right? So you see in the last 1.5 years, all people want is cryptocurrency, right? But 5 years ago, nobody wanted that, right? And that's about timing the market. So that's what makes successful products, right? But I think what makes successful fintechs is that they are willing to change what they offer to the crowd. So I've seen many fintechs start with, let's say, offering a credit card service, etc. 6 months down the road, they're offering like a payroll service instead because they realize that maybe that makes a little bit more money, right? And I think like that agility and the ability to kind of always think about what the market really wants, right? What the users really actually are asking for. And it's very funny because you hear this all the time, right? Listen to your users. People just don't do that enough because they only listen to what they want to listen to, right? And I think that's exactly what makes a good fintech, right? Innovating on like products that make sure that people get what they want tomorrow, right? Instead of like 2 weeks from today, like people just sign up and then they just get the products whatever they want. Could be financial, could be non-financial, right? That's what makes a good fintech, right? And I think if you put both of them together, you will then realize that a fintech can offer many different products, and they end up maybe like servicing different groups of people with subsections in the company, right? Depending on how big each of the fintechs are. So yeah, I mean like that's how I see it, right? And I think from a TechX angle, what I really believe is that because now we come from a financial background, right? We used to work for like a 150-year-old bank, right? Today you look at the products in the market, nothing looks like 150 years ago, but the products today still look like 150 years ago, right? And that's the problem. So, I mean, like for us, I think like we innovate on technology because technology at the end of the day is baseline of what can actually enable. But at the end of this, if I go back to what makes a successful fintech, I think like TechX now has the job to actually play a successful fintech, right? They have to now start to listen to users more intently. It's not just about like trying to find out how to sell more loan products, right? I think now let's start thinking about how do I get, let's say, a microloan item like quickly out to the customer. Can I offer him different ways to actually sell the product and whatnot, right? So that's exactly I think where TechX is being positioned now, which I think is great because then we at the innovation group get to work with people like them and we discuss all the interesting things, and at the end of the day, making them into like a product, whether it's like a data, whether it's a blockchain, whether it's etc. And not all of this, I think it's just one big new Web3 architecture, right? Put it that way. So yeah, I think that's what I'll say about it.
Okay. So the next question will go to Maxime. Yeah. Consider that Atato is the solution provider that going blockchain and digital asset space right now in Thailand, and you being in forefront of this fintech battle. What do you take on this? What do you think on this?
It's a very general questions, but maybe into a bit of history, exactly like you said. So we started Atato in 2018 with the idea basically to build blockchain platform for corporates. Mostly our clients were banks, crypto exchanges, some of you may know some of them. And when we are talking with businesses about blockchains, nobody cared. It was the bear market. They say, yeah, it's cool, Bitcoin is crashing, your technology will never get adopted, and so on. So today, everybody talks about digital asset, everybody wants to do digital assets, they don't understand anything about it, but they want to do it. So it's a very different space compared to 2 years ago for a couple of reasons. The first part is that we see that crypto, Bitcoin, Ethereum are on the time. It's been over 10 years now, and they have the financial people, financial institutions start to say, okay, well, this thing stay up, and more people are working on it. So okay, we need to look at it in a more serious fashion. The second part, which is very important, is regulation. I mean, I know crypto is for anarchists and you want to be your own bank and so on, but let's be real, nothing gets done if the regulation is not actually managing it. In Thailand, we are very lucky because since 2019, we have a clear regulatory framework. You can go buy your Bitcoin on GitHub or next the right way, right? We want it to go tax, maybe. But it's a really different space for businesses because now they can invest in blockchain. They can look at the technology, it's regulated, they can talk to their board and they have the green light to do so. The last part is that it's about what are we developing for people on blockchain. 2 years ago, nobody understood what blockchain was. They had a bit of crypto in their web, but that's it. Because crypto, Bitcoin was actually based for people to become their own bank. You don't want to be in the financial system. You want to be your own bank. It's made for tech people. It's very difficult to approach it. Very difficult to even set up well. Now it's different. People are building product, the same way as Andre was saying, for the day-to-day people. And I want product that my mom can use today. She will never set up a MetaMask and trade on the exchange. So what's coming now in blockchain is much more easy to onboard products. That's why you see more adoptions. In Thailand, we see a lot of young people who don't have much access to stock brokers and financial products. For crypto, you can do it by yourself. So the last thing I would say, why do you see a big change that we have seen, especially since last year, is that the people who come to work in cryptocurrencies are already smart. People from Google, Microsoft, I mean, people who are not looking at the space in 2 years ago now wants to work in the cryptocurrency. So completely different. I was not expecting it to be that fast, but in the next 2 years, it will be quite incredible.
So those are great insight from both Andre and Maxime. Yeah, into what is happening to the next step, which will lead to the next topic of discussion. We will go to Jonas with better. Being in the Kubernetes space, having simple as your partnership, where do you see the biggest area for innovation and disruption in FinTech? What do you think about this?
Yeah, great question. So, as I've said, we are, especially for me, being located in Singapore, we are looking at startups from across the region, and I think the key areas. And looking back also at last year, ASEAN startups raised $3.5 billion, which is actually 3 times over 2020, and so it's a significant growth. And the growth areas, especially that we saw last year, is like buy now, pay later lending areas really growing strong. I think it's a bit of a clampdown now. Regulators are stepping in, which probably is not a bad idea. You mentioned before, digital banks. I think a big topic as well, and I think for incumbents, it's in a way also a way to really now go ahead and to innovate. Maybe a topic you are really close as well. For us as well this year, it's been a big topic already, Web3, and here we are talking about Web3. I think what we are really seeing 2 years ago, like Maxime said, I think 2 or 3 years ago, people were still very, very hesitant, maybe didn't even want to talk to you if you mentioned crypto. And what we saw last year is really like interest is building and capabilities are built internally. They hire very smart people. So what I would foresee for this year is really like the incumbents are going to try and experiment with digital assets. I think infrastructure needs to be built. So very bullish on that for us as well. But I also need to throw in a couple of buzzwords here. I think GameFi is a big topic for us. Working with Clayton, actually, Clayton is Kakao's public blockchain arm. So gaming, blockchain gaming is a big topic. Then also the metaverse is another big topic that of course goes into gaming. But we saw, for example, JP Morgan just opening a lounge in Decentraland, which I visited, and interesting. There's not much, not much to see, frankly. It's basically you can click on a couple of reports that are sitting on the tables, and you can listen to a couple of webinars. But again, I think it's all about experimentation. They're going in there, they're setting this up, and we're working very closely with our partners to always be at the forefront and explore new ideas. So we're running an early stage program where it's much more explorative, and then a later stage startup, which is more about really then matching for specific use cases that they have. And maybe last point on kind of areas in ASEAN. I mean, we are very bullish on markets like Indonesia, which is such a big market. But I think in terms of crypto, for us, Thailand is very interesting. So that's why I'm also here exploring that space. And also Vietnam has a lot of tech talent actually. So we are also looking at startups from Vietnam.
Yeah, I guess, Jonas. So next is Jostein. Yeah, and a service provider from the 17 habitant that have been interacted with many companies across the industry. What your view on this for the FinTech next scale?
Yeah, I think the interesting part now is the buzzword. As in, there has been, again, I'm an engineer, I'm passionate about software, I'm passionate about solving problems. Over the last few years, of course, you had AR, VR, AI, ML, blockchain, Web3. So again, Oculus and Facebook has been working on I would say the metaverse for the last 10, 12 years. There's a lot of things happening for AR. You have the Snapchat glasses. You have so again, I'm all for innovation. I'm all for research and development, but the engineering is all about solving problems. So I think for me that is kind of what I see now with most clients that come to us that want to have a blockchain project. The question now is, you have the money grab that people see there's easy money and want to jump on it. Then you have the people that actually want to solve a problem. So I think for us, as I would say, a consulting company helping enterprises to solve problems, blockchain is, I would say, is part of our toolbox. But we are always trying to really define the problem statement. What are you trying to solve? And is this the right tool or not? In some cases, there are good use cases for it. One of our clients here, Fraction, is doing fractionalized ownership of real estate. You have the title deeds put into a trust. You have an entity that is actually tied to an actual asset. And it's again fractionalized, and for me it makes sense from a use case point of view. Right? Then you have the crazy monkey and the green monkey and the blue monkey and the JPEGs. That is not tangible in any way. And is that really solving the problem? I'm not really sure. So I think from my side and our side is that we are there as a consultant, we are there to help and solve problems and find solutions for problems. And for me, on the personal side, I think like blockchain is kind of as a technology looking for a problem. And that is going to be very interesting to see now in the next few years where it ends up and where is that real problem to be solved. And of course, it's very interesting to see all the focus now from especially investors and big companies now investing into this. And I really like to see kind of what the future brings and what kind of problems will be solved now, right? If it's international remittance, or if it's helping unbanked, or if it's helping grandmas invest their money. So yeah.
Yeah. So Maxime, I would like to pivot back to you because one of the major technology trends as initiatives both around blockchain, tokenization of assets, and also Web3 infrastructure. How has this changed the way you perceive the digital economy and the importance of cross-border, cross-industry partnership? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a very large question, but just would like to raise on something that you were saying, because it was the case 2 years ago. People were saying, okay, blockchain is a solution looking for a problem. But the thing that people don't understand is that blockchain is not here to solve the problem of today. It's basically to create new businesses. Just giving you an example, actually, it's related to your question. So We unfortunately we see what's happening today in Ukraine. What happened? Basically, they created a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. People were sending funds in less than 24 hours. We have few millions, which actually were going where it was supposed to go and actually organized and managed by the community. Before, it was not possible. You have to pay an organization, wait 48 hours for transfer and so on. So, what I'm seeing is that it's the same way for decentralized finance. Today, I remember for many years I was trying to buy US stocks as a foreigner in Thailand. I couldn't do it. No banks were going to sell me a stock, they were going to sell me a fund and so on. I would have loved to go to Robinhood and buy some stocks. Today, with blockchain decentralized finance, gladly I don't have to ask a bank. I can go, I can participate to the finance space, don't need to ask anybody, I can do it. And those new things, they didn't exist 2 or 3 years ago. And so it's difficult for people to just project themselves in business that do not exist yet. So so how I see, and I should come back to your questions, blockchains actually blur the borders. So we are seeing it with Ukraine, we are seeing it with decentralized finance. It's partially true. Because today, basically you need to follow regulation. If you want to buy cryptocurrency in Thailand, you can go to Binance, like a lot of people, but otherwise you need to go to a regulated exchange and report your tax and so on. So the regulator is trying to keep the border for this new technology, but clearly we see a very breed of young, smart people who are creating protocols that never existed before, accessible to anybody, whatever the age you are. You don't need to wait 18 years old to buy a stock, which is insane, but anyway. So what I'm saying, to come back to your questions, I see a lot of partnerships and I see a lot of communities. What we didn't see much on Web 2, so Facebook and social media, okay, it's a giant community, but you didn't have a fan club of Facebook. When you talk about NFTs, GameFi or decentralized finance, you have a lot of group, people are in the community, they discuss different protocols, they exchange a lot in many different countries. And I think blockchain is a super good tool to basically blur the borders, to discuss with everyone from anywhere, and participate to super cool stuff. I mean, when we decentralized finance is horrible, frankly, you need to be a tech guy to understand it, but the moment you get it, well, it's super nice. And you get hooked and you want to understand it more. What we are going to see, to finish on your questions, in the next year or two, you're going to see much more user-friendly interfaces to abstract all the technology. It's made for the nerds and tech people, maybe like us. We love it, but 90% of the people don't. So I think we are going to see very cool application that you're going to have on your phone. You will not really realize that it's blockchain technology behind. And on our side, I think community is really very important.
Yeah, that's great. Excellent. So, Andre, what about you, especially when SCB TechX is positioned to serve both Thai market and broader Asian market in the future?
Difficult questions to answer as usual. Before I want to talk about TechX, I want to also talk a little bit about border kind of restrictions, right? Maxime brought a very good point when it comes to DAOs as well as DeFi, and I'll say why. Because we throw the word Web3, we throw the word blockchain around today it's just a random word that we think everyone understands. But I remember back then, a good 6-7 years ago, when I first kind of looked at all of these things. What got me into it wasn't the currency. I think what got me into it was the ideology, right? Decentralized, and a matter of way. Maxime calls them anarchists. I just think it's more just self-management, right? That exact ideology has brought finance people and non-financial people together discussing strategies on DeFi protocols, right? I'm a very big DeFi fan. I use DeFi every day, and I shouldn't be saying this, but I don't believe in putting my money in the bank as well. So the truth is that the reason why tech people actually like it is not necessarily because of money, not because of like, you know, the tech itself, but tech people I find are inherently rebellious in some nature, right? That has allowed like all of the different cultures, doesn't matter whether you're white, black, you're yellow, you know, you live in whatever not state, etc. That we can discuss things as equals and basically as like, you know, an NFT with a profile picture on Twitter, and no one's gonna judge you, right? And that's something that I think is very difficult to find today. Now, if I bring that thought into a business context, there's always going to be the case where, you know, like I would rather work with company A or company B because, you know, they're known for, you know, bringing big deals, etc., right? And I think what's good about TechX, at least like how it's growing its culture, as well as like how I think why we're even sitting here today, right? I mean, all of us are all from different nationalities, right? We're still sitting here today talking about this, right? Is that it allows the companies to then be very targeted and strategic about what they want to do, and remove all of that, you know, that again 150-year-old banking thinking, and say, I'm more than willing to try out working with, let's say, a startup because they may have good ideas, right? And this is going back to I think what Maxime said as well about blockchain doesn't sometimes try to solve problems of today. Blockchain tries to actually create new kinds of like businesses for tomorrow, and that's exactly that investment mentality that, you know, people are taking today as well. And I think of blockchain technology, Web3, outside of just the ideologies of all of these as investments that you want to make so that you are ready to actually handle the market if the market is going to be there for you, right? Goes back to sound changing. Goes back to a little bit of like what I said about product, right? I think the first sentence as well. You cannot always necessarily wait for the opportunity to come knocking on you, but you have to be ready if the opportunity comes itself, right? But I agree with what Jostein said as well, because like a lot of people, again, you think about people trying to use blockchain as a word, right? And you're just trying to find things to chuck blockchain in. It's just like, I remember 5 years ago when API was a buzzword, right? 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. Everybody was talking about APIs and microservices, but no one knew why they had to use APIs in the first place, right? And it's a very similar thing that we're seeing today, right? But going back, I think we need to like, you know, TechX, culture, partners, whatnot. It's becoming more and more important, I think, for companies, especially in Thailand, to start to realize that we are not, you know, a Thai-based company. We are a company that has the opportunity of the fragmented market of ASEAN to actually make a lot of friends, right? And by thinking of the ideology I said, right, decentralizing that out, allowing a company to, you know, run what they're good at. I'm not going to send a blockchain guy to sell Oracle, right? It makes no sense. And if a company knows how to do that well, and how a company like TechX actually starts to think about putting people in the right places, whether it's in different countries, whether it's in different technologies, especially I think in the world of IT, we always used to say we are connected, but like what was very mentioned, Web 2 is like connection without real connection, right? Now it's interaction, right? Web 3 requires interaction. And that's why like it's definitely going to become more important, right? Business-wise, positioning-wise, product-wise, even thinking-wise, right? Changing the mentality of like someone that has worked for, let's say, a certain type of project for the last 30 years. Imagine him telling him to accept the ideology of Web3. Basically impossible. But do they have a choice? Probably not, right? And I think that that's where I think we are positioned to make sure that there's a correct cultural mindset to move forward and really tackle that market, right? Especially in ASEAN.
Thank you, Andy. So I had like to change the focus slightly into how to succeed in this kind of competition space. So the next question will go to Jostein. Your goal in every engagement is to make your client success as your success. What are some lessons or perspectives that you have like to share to new incumbent to deliver value effectively?
I think it touches back on my initial point, right? As in, there is a lot of business opportunities, and again, as Maxime said, I do agree that there is a lot of new business models out there to be made. But I think one of the challenges now is a lot of companies are trying to solve existing problems, maybe with the wrong tools, right? I want to have a loyalty program. I want to have a earn and reward program. I want to, is it the right technology? If you're looking at, okay, you decentralized platform, you put all the data on blockchain. Okay, so now you think decentralized, perfect. Then you look at GDPR. Now that you would say, I'm going to remove my user data by law. Is it immutable? You can't delete anything, right? You have the cost of using the service, you have the time, you have the, right? The impact on environment, right? Blockchain itself is taking more impact on the environment now than what the whole country of Netherlands or all electric vehicles in the world, right? So there are a lot of innovation, there's research, is it the right technology now, or is it technology for the future? Is it an iteration on where we're going? I think that for me is more the question. So if a client will have, again, easy money, jump on the bandwagon, do something that's working in another market, and you feel that you can scam Maxime's grandmother from her money. Versus building something, because again, you see this every day now. You have different NFT projects, different blockchain projects going out and kind of taking their investors' money, right? So that also is, again, is an investor or is a speculator. So, but again, back to the point is that for me, if you want to succeed in building a product or you need to solve a problem, right? So I think for us, we're looking a little bit more down to earth. We're trying to solve today's problems, and we are trying to find the right tool to solve these problems, right? So we have done projects related to blockchain. We're working on with different companies now that are working on blockchain. There's very interesting problems. But for us as a company, we're focusing primarily on the client side, architecture, everything surrounding that, right? So I think, like everything else, like again, AI, a few years back, every startup in Southeast Asia had AI and ML on their slide. Everybody's an AI company because they do algorithms, right? They have a statement in their code. Now you're an AI company, right? So before that, it was chatbots, right? Everybody got chatbots. Everybody thinks chatbots are going to solve the world, every problem. Everybody that ever used a chatbot, you're going into a. When do you use a chatbot? When you're upset. What makes you more upset? It's a chatbot, right? So I think there's the right use case for and the right time for everything. And then again, as an engineer, I'm very passionate about engineering. I'm very passionate about software and solving problems. But again, I'm still trying to find that right use case. And for me, it's I love to follow technology and look into this. But again, depending on what the client is, we will advise them at least to find a solution to solve their problems. But of course, I do understand there's a lot of optimistic thinking, and there's a lot of money to make. It just depends on how you make that money. Right? So.
Okay, thank you, Jostein.
So,
yeah.
It's an interesting thought because, like, when you talk about like creating value for clients or whatnot. I mean, I used to, before I worked for SCB, I used to work for Accenture as well, right? So we're all in the same space. So we're all like trying to deliver value at the end of the day, right? Whatever value means to the client. But I do realize that actually a lot of times, like, you tell when you serve the clients, they don't really know what they want as well, right? A big part of this, and maybe this is not necessarily related to Web3 or whether it's related to blockchain, etc., but I see that the one biggest value that we always strive for was trying to define that problem for them, like what you said on an engineering front, right? This is a much harder thing to do than a lot of people realize, right? Much, much harder. A lot of people have grand ideas and things. Everyone over here probably has like a different idea of what Web3 and blockchain is as well, isn't it? But being able to siphon that down to a point, right? Being able to actually decide that, hey, this is the real problem that you really want to solve. That, to me, I think is like one of the things that a lot of like people like yourself would try to do, and give that continuous value creation, right? Regardless of blockchain or not. Yeah.
Thank you, and then for add-on. So the last question will go to Jonas, and then I will give the opportunity to the people here to ask the question. So anyone have the question, please raise your hand, and then I will give the microphone to you. Yeah. So Jonas, what is your perspective on this, especially when you have seen so many projects on fintech to mentorship and incubation program?
Yeah, so on the success, you know, that's very hard. No, but it's true, you know. I mean, maybe let's look at it. One side is the startup side, the other one is also the incumbents that we are working with. And maybe I start with the incumbents. I think one of the failing strategies that I'm seeing is that an incumbent has this brilliant idea. Maybe they want to do something in blockchain, right? And then they just basically start plowing millions into that project, and just go really for this one project, and that has to be a success. And that's usually, you know, not. I mean, it can work out, but frankly, if we just have one project, it might fail, right? So, and that's going to be having quite some significant impacts. So what I would advise also to corporates is really like, you know, don't put all your eggs into one basket. Really, again, prototype, experiment. That's really how you can achieve success, in my opinion, if you just really explore. And then on the startup side, I mean, we are running different kinds of programs, and I think at the end of the day, what we are also doing is we believe in the law of big numbers. At the end, even though I'd love to be able to predict which startup is going to have success, but we have to be honest. I mean, at the end of the program, we have 10 startups. One might be really good, 5 are just okay, and then 2, 3 within 3-4 years will not be around anymore. And that's just the fact, right? So in that sense, again, and then in terms of what are the success factors, I mean, we really look at, especially early stage, you really want to look at the team. I mean, Maxime can for sure, I mean, you guys are all entrepreneurs yourself. It's the team, the initiative is going to be so important because you will face so many hurdles, so many roadblocks. You need to have grit, but you also really need to have experience in space. So we really look at the founding team. Who are they? Do they have complementary skills? But then there are a lot of other factors like, you know, is the market big enough? And here we're talking about ASEAN, right? I mean, if you are a startup that's setting up in Singapore, there are only 5 million customers potential that you can reach. That's never really going to get you to a unicorn status. So you need to really look at the bigger markets, and you need to explore, is this actually, whatever I'm building, is this addressing a problem that people will adopt in these other markets? I think you mentioned timing. You know, Facebook was a great idea. Was it a great idea 5 years earlier or 2 years later? Probably not. You would have failed miserably. So all of these are factors that we consider when we get startups into our program. I think I could go on forever, but there is no great formula that, I mean, we're still working on it.
I'd just like to add something about what you said, because it's exactly true. And talking about blockchain again, I'm sorry for that, but people today want the Netflix of blockchain. So when the internet started, you didn't have Netflix. You had to wait many years to get Google Maps on your phone and so on, social media. That's why it's called Web 1, then after Web 2 and Web 3. Today, people are so impatient. They saw blockchain, it's a new technology, so they want streaming on blockchain, putting everything on top. And what we are seeing, people failing in the blockchain space, is generally people who don't understand the technology and at which stage the technology is. So there are grand ideas about blockchain and revolutionize the world, but you need to have the correct infrastructure in order to do it. And yeah, that's overall for the past 5 years we have seen companies succeeded in this space because they understood the technology.
Thank you for the input, and I believe we heard many excellent angles of the perspective. So I think let's open to the floor for the question. Anyone have any question? Please raise your hand.
Comments on mine as well.
Comment or add on anything?
Any DeFi users here? Yeah. No? Any DeFi users here? Want to share your DeFi experience with us?
Yeah, you can share. Yeah.
If you don't mind. Rock pools and scams.
Well, we run it's not really DeFi search. I mean, if we were using industry speak, we are CDFi. So we are similar to Celsius Network or Nexo, so really a centralized, decentralized application, if I can put it that way. I'm not sure entirely what it is you want to know, but we're a very early stage startup. We founded the company about 12 months ago, and February is our 12-month anniversary, so we're currently sitting with about 75,000 customers and $500 million of assets under management. So it's been a pretty rapid rise. And we kind of fall in this grey area between cryptocurrency and decentralized finance. So it's quite a sort of niche area that we're pushing into. And, I think one of the questions I was going to ask, and I don't know if it's a specific question or a comment, but it's probably more around the sort of regulatory and compliance landscape of crypto specifically. Certainly being at the sort of forefront of the DeFi sector, it's an area that we're very conscious of. We're constantly trying to thread the needle in terms of staying on the right side of compliance. So, as I say, I'm not really sure that there's a question on the back of that, but if there is a question on the back of that, it might be along the lines of how do we see the regulatory and compliance landscape evolving around kind of things like DeFi and things like cryptocurrency specifically. Thailand's, very kind of open to this, but well, they start off being quite open and then they start closing doors behind them after. But I'd be interested to get the panel's take on where they see the sort of regulatory landscape progressing.
Okay, I will start and maybe you can add something. So, when you talk about crypto, there is two kinds of people. There is the first one, they believe in decentralized finance, don't want to talk to a bank, they want to keep their money themselves, and they don't want middlemen. That's how crypto started, actually. That's how decentralized finance started. People who didn't want the banks to be involved, they wanted to have a much equal service through code. And those people are the ones who are making innovation in the blockchain space. However, decentralized finance is not for everyone. It's a nightmare to understand, it's super risky, you need to know what you are doing. So today, you can go on ZipMax, lend your USDC, get 10% a year. That's nice. I mean, I'm a user, I'm a blockchain, I'm a DeFi lover, and I use ZipMax to stake my coin because it's much more simple. And ZipMax is regulated. I know, you see the CEO on TV, you see it's a real company with real assets, real people, right? On decentralized finance, to trust the protocol, well, nobody's auditing the smart contract before making an investment, I can tell you that. So to recap, I think the regulation is good because it allows much more people in the space. And 90% of the people will go with something easier on a regulated exchange. However, the innovation is actually built by those people who don't want those middlemen. So I guess this is where you can see the trend. Look at what's going on in DeFi. Countries can try to regulate them, it's impossible. They still don't understand that, but I think it's a market for everyone.
So I'm not a regulation person at all, obviously, right? But if we were to think about where regulations is heading towards, I mean, if I were a betting man, I put to kind of like think about how regulations actually would enable companies like yourself, right, to actually make the markets more efficient. See, the thing that I've always liked about DeFi is that I think it's very efficient. DeFi, some people, I call DeFi mercenary finance. And there's a reason for that. People make money and people lose money in DeFi because of that. Not everyone has the appetite for that, and therefore regulators use it as an excuse, right? And then services start to evolve, like staking on Nexo, staking on Binance, whatever, Celsius equivalent. They basically just market make this for you, and you just look at one single, application. Don't pay gas fees. Don't interact with like 10 different blockchains, because that's not what a lot of people like to do as well, right? And I'm very sure that regulations are going to move towards like allowing these businesses. And again, like if I had to make a second bet, we've been hearing a lot of things like CBDC, we've been, in the US, in Europe, over here, including as well. My guess is that if they knew how to regulate CBDCs, well, they probably would slowly start to be able to clearly regulate companies that are dealing with like CeFi, that actually at the end of the day deal with crypto, right? Because regulators need to keep up to demand, right? And the demand of like even companies with big voracious appetites and budgets are waiting. Regulators cannot ignore that, right? And I'm thinking that if it's just for like Thailand itself, at least the experience that we've had is that they're quite friendly when it comes to like these kinds of conversations. The one thing that I think is present in Thailand, like if you were to compare against let's say like MAS, right, back in Singapore, is that MAS is not going to ask you what do you think, right? They're just going to do it, right? But over here, I think like they are figuring it out themselves, right? It's experimental, and I think like regulation is probably going to move towards easing. They just probably don't know which statement to make first, right? It's not a sequential thing, right? So, I mean, if I had to, like I said, if I had to bet, I think regulations are going to not necessarily ease up on cryptocurrency, but I think be more open to businesses based on crypto investments, right, and blockchain investments. Applies to things like synthetic stocks, right, synthetic securities like security tokens, etc., right? You see a very, very big synthetic market on the blockchain, right? Whether is it on Luna, whether is it on Yearn Finance with like Iron Bank, etc., right? So I don't think like regulators actually understand that these things even exist today. Like most of them don't, right? You tell them that like I want to do a synthetic on let's say like a stock exchange of Thailand, they ask you what the hell is a synthetic, right? So I mean like they're catching up, and I think we just have to give them enough time to catch up. But I have no doubt that they do see the value in like digital currencies, whether it's a CBDC or like public cryptocurrency. And I think they do see value in blockchain because I think like again they realize that they need to keep making new forms of GDP, right? They need to get people to actually make more money, create more businesses, etc. So, I mean, long story short, again, I'm not a regulations guy, but I think regulations will support it. I mean, eventually, you can't tell when, but they know they have to do it quick, right?
I can ask a question.
Oh, sure.
All right. So a quick question here from you on the I would say feasibility of using blockchain, right? You talk about decentralized. So again, there are challenges with what's gas fee, the payment, the time of actually doing transactions, the data you store on chain. Again, as mentioned, GDPR, TDA, you cannot really store things that you can never remove it. So again, how do you solve these problems by building a decentralized solution where you not have to put all your data in a centralized database or off-chain, private chain, right? As in, how do you solve it? Because for me, it seems like it's broken. Right?
First, Slack payment. Today, we are not going to do payment on blockchain. We have PhonePay, it's very good, works perfectly. Why would you make payment on blockchain in Thailand? Doesn't make any sense. So, you're right, many of the applications that people are thinking in blockchains, they don't make any sense today. The infrastructure is not there, the technology is not mature enough. You want to make a transfer on Ethereum, costs you $50. You have a lot of applications, but not to solve the problems that people are thinking about. And I remember I had these conversations with companies from 2018 to 2020, it was the same. They say, oh, we want to implement blockchain in payments. So, all right, good luck. So, yeah, but because blockchain, we can do cross-border and delete the fees and the remittance and so on. Yes, you can do it, but to make people use it on their bank application, it's a very difficult task. So it's not for everything, and blockchain is not here to solve any issues. But I think there is some infrastructure things like layer 2. It's very difficult. You don't want to understand it. You don't need to understand it, but it's coming. People are building application on top of it. So you are going to use those layer 2 solutions, paying less fees, and you can transact on Ethereum like this. But it requires a very large amount of engineering and applications before you're able to do it. And as I said, people in blockchain are so impatient. They want to make 100x in 2 weeks, because making 2x in 2 days is not enough. And it's the same thing for the technology itself. They want everything now. And it's difficult to say no, but we are going to get there, but it's going to take some time.
I got a good answer, I think, for you. I'll take a stab at this. I mean, as a tech guy, right? As a tech guy. So forget about blockchain, forget about whatever. As a tech guy, I see blockchain technology itself, I think, in two very different types of spaces, right? Consider blockchain in a private environment where you have like your own private consortium, etc. That is really kind of like isolated, right? There are a couple of good cases over there for, let's say, data management, and I'll tell you why. Like, we did a project back, when a PDPA was supposed to come out, right? And managing customer data across many different databases, across different legacy systems, was a complete nightmare, right? Audit did not know where the data was, some was on papers, and whatever not. And I think like if, let's say, people start to move towards, let's say, a common technology, right? And now blockchain itself, especially in the private spaces, you don't have that many, I guess, enterprise choices, right? Put it this way. You either go with like Ethereum, private Ethereum consensus, or you go with something like R3 Corda or like Hyperledger, right? Something like that. Because the choices are actually quite little, right? The innovations over there from the technology improvement standpoint are also very concentrated. Now, if I bring my data use case back into this, right? And the good thing about some of these enterprise blockchains is that you can actually choose what to go and be exposed to a party. So it's not like, Ethereum go and search a thing, everything is open, right? Think of it, I see like private blockchains like Zcash transactions, right? Or Tornado Cash type of transactions, right? You roughly know what's going on, but you know enough. Same like what ING did, right? ING did this zero knowledge range proof a thing where they sped up KYC for loans a lot better. Why? Because they did not need you to upload a document, right? They needed to just basically ask you, hey, where are you located? And when you answer that question, you didn't even have to say, I'm located in Singapore. You can say, I'm located in ASEAN, right? And because of like these kinds of implementations that are possible with blockchain itself, right? Verifiable, but I don't need all the data. That to me, I think, is something that is a very interesting use case from an engineering standpoint, right? Not needing to basically know that you have the password, but I can prove to you that I have a password without showing you the matter of fact, right? Something like that. So that's one space. On public blockchains, I was just reading this article actually like earlier today, right? And I mean, like we're talking about whether just about transaction fees, gas, etc. I think a lot of people kind of like use the gas problem as a conversion, as a way to kind of like stop their technology conversation. I mean, like if I look at gas on like AVAX or like Phantom or whatnot, I mean they're all EVM compatible, but they're quite cheap, right? It costs like 3 cents for a transaction, not like your usual arm and a leg on Ethereum, right? So for them, like if I use, let me talk about this use case I just saw. Wage workers, right? People who clock in and clock out. If you guys use DeFi, you will know that your rewards when you stake something is actually per second. If I were to convert something like that to, let's say, your Netflix payment, every time I decide to switch on a movie, it starts, and then I do a per second billing, right? And then once I switch it off, it's like basically I'm staking your coins, right? Think of it that way. These are actually like interesting models that you probably could not do, again, without blockchain, right? And that's something that to me, from an engineering perspective, is really interesting, right? But again, whether you want the data on public or not, I think that's at the end of the day a choice, right? That's a completely different conversation. I don't want to go there because the two schools of thought are very, very different. But yeah, I mean, like I think that's how I would see it, right? Technology-wise, decentralized. Well, decentralization again. Let's put that aside first, right? Because you see, like I think you know about that trilemma thingy, right? You have security, you have decentralization, and then you scale, right? You cannot have all three, right? So if I just look at blockchain, blockchain is a technology, then I think you have to make a choice, right? You become like a solutioning choice. Now, whether if you want to, again, like everyone has a different idea of what Web3 is, but at the end of the day, I think if we want to bring Web3 to life, in a more probabilistic manner, then let's ask ourselves from an engineering technology standpoint whether it makes sense to us, regardless of whether it's scaling or is it decentralized and whatnot. Right? And that's how I would think of it.
Any conversation from the here? Any person? Okay. Thank you. I hope the business will not gonna make this us too hungry. So then I will just ask quick questions, and I hope you're not so hungry yet. But I think this question is very need to be asked because since we touched on DeFi, I would like to go to the very hot area of DeFi 2.0. We heard about Olympus DAO. We heard about tens of thousands of APY, and that's all collapsed, right? And like you mentioned, Avex and Phantom, we have a lot of Olympus DAO forks. So, I would like to ask you guys, what is your opinion on DeFi 2.0, especially the model of Olympus DAO, and if you can come up with a tokenomics or suggestion that leads to the DeFi 3.0, what that will be? Sorry, it's a hard one.
Let me try this, right? So if let's say we are talking about Olympus DAO, Wonderland, like a SPAC model for VCs investments, supposedly redistribute the earnings, etc. Like I tend to believe that the only problem with people like Wonderland as well as Olympus is that two things, right? Revenue share, I think, was never established, right? So you have a DAO that's supposed to kind of support it from a treasury perspective. We support the treasury, but then at the end of the day, nothing comes back, right? So I think that's one main problem. Tokenomics, on the other hand, I think has to kind of come to a point where the stock split, what they call it, right, needs to stop. APY like that has never been sustainable. We are very, very well aware of that, right? And if I remember, the one move that I kind of really liked about Wonderland versus Olympus at that point in time was shifting all liquidity between Time and Memo to Red Memo, right? I think that was a great move. The problem with that is that once they did it, they didn't follow through with what they actually really wanted to do, right? So that kind of caused the price to crash, whatever. But then again, I'm not here to talk about cryptocurrency prices, right? So I think that failure is basically about the failure of delivery, which is something like what I think we would think, talking about, do you trust enough a person that is on Twitter, on Discord, enough to actually put your money in and assume, right, that they actually can follow through the process, right, together with the whole Sifu problem with Wonderland, etc., right? So I think DeFi 2.0 basically is okay. The problem is that, if there are commitments to it, I think the model can work outside of the Ponzi-nomics of the tokens, right? And DeFi 3.0, I think I want to clarify, are we talking about the whole Andre Cronje P33 kind of movement with NFTs? Is that what you're referring to? Or DeFi 3.0?
Might not be idea.
Yeah, so one of the reasons why I think that kind of kicked off a little bit of a new movement, right, was because now people had a way to kind of represent ownership through NFTs or whatnot. I think that's number one. Taking a little bit of the whole 3-3 model, that whole 3-3 meme from Olympus DAO as well as Wonderland, is that it actually kind of opened people's eyes to the importance of longer term investing. Right. A lot of people in crypto, they do not do long-term investments at all, which is why I think that was the benefit that created the first movement for DeFi 3.0 in the first place, right? Without that, it would have never existed. Bring in the VE part of it, or the governance part of it, right? That allows them to now start to, let's say, invest in governance protocols that actually they are okay with. They are holders of, let's say, a great example of this is like that whole Solidly and Solidex movement recently, right? Together with like all the bribes that come from Spirit Swap, from like Beethoven X, etc., right? If you guys are looking at that, you know what we're talking about. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, I'm sorry. There's no connection over there, but you'll see that whole governance thing now that is actually solving what Wonderland would have actually, required, right? Which is, I lock the tokens, now I'm voting on what I actually have as investments for you to follow through with what you actually have put out there, right? Now it's not dependent on like one person saying something or deciding you will just stop doing that, right? And to me, that concept of DeFi 3.0 is kind of like morphing a little bit into what you would expect as an investor to kind of like take a position in, right? And I think it also gives credibility to protocols that, usually maybe people won't care about because they're under like 50 million market cap, etc., right? But now, with the representation of the collateral in 3.0, I think like it gives the investors confidence that, hey, I'm here for the long run, I'm here to stay, right? And I think that's something that we have not seen in crypto in a long time, right? You have the cult followings of like, Bitcoin and Ethereum, etc. But when it comes to protocols themselves, you've never really seen this, I think, like in DeFi, right? And I think that's very, very crucial.
I will make it much more general. And first, I don't know what is DeFi 2.0 and 3.0. I'm just using DeFi. It's very new, right? It's 1.5 years old. So people are trying different things. They incentivize you to go on a protocol with a high APY because they want to bring users, that's it. But it's like a proof of concept today. I think what really is going to change DeFi, and for me the DeFi 2.0 will be the day you can actually have a mortgage. If today you can take a real asset to lend it on the DeFi protocol, then it's going to change the game. Then you don't need a bank. Why? Today you need a bank mostly as regular people because you want to take a mortgage and buy an apartment. The business is different, but today your credit card, you pay and you take a mortgage. If tomorrow you can basically digitalize a real asset to put it as a collateral on decentralized finance, it's going to change the game totally. And then, sorry for the banks, but I think finished.
It's like
so I guess the real change is going to come from that. Why it hasn't come yet? Because it's extremely difficult. So I guess it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time, but that's what's going to really change the decentralized finance.
Well, thanks for your perspective and answer the question. So I think we have almost the time to go to the next session that which Jonas will come to talk about the FinTech program.
Great.
Okay. And you
Thank you, guys. I will keep it short because in the back we have the pizzas and we all are really craving to have pizzas and beers again, so I'll keep it short. I just want to give you guys a quick introduction about what we're doing, and especially I want to just talk about the programs that we're going to run in the future, and maybe if some of you guys are startups and interested to join the FTN, then that might be great. Just a quick history. We are since 2015 on this planet, originally from Switzerland. I'm also Swiss, but now we are in 3 locations, Spain, Switzerland and Singapore, and we incubated and accelerated over 200 startups so far, mainly in the FinTech and InsurTech space, and now definitely going deep into Web3 as well. In Singapore itself, we work with 5 partners. We work with private bank Julius Baer. We work with Six Group, which is also the Swiss Stock Exchange. We work with Franklin Templeton, one of the largest asset managers. We work with Clayton, that's Kakao's public blockchain arm out of Korea. And then we also work with R3 that was mentioned today with their Corda platform. Yeah, really work with startups from payments all the way into infrastructure and continue doing that. We also have Tressa here today. She's from one of our startups in the current batch. She's from a RepTech startup. So if you want to talk about AML, go and talk to Tressa. But about the programs, we have two flagship programs. One is an incubator. It's really for early stage startups, pre-seed, pre-revenue. It's a 5-month program that we run in all the 3 hubs. And then we have an accelerator, which is for later stage startups that have already raised a seed round or a Series A. And it's much more about matching them with our corporate partners. Just specifically, I want to talk about 2 programs, and then I'm done. If you guys are in Web3 developing blockchain applications, and especially if you're working on gaming, so GameFi, a big topic on this Clayton program, are you doing something in the metaverse, or are you working on the creator economy, meaning helping independent creators to issue their creations on the blockchain, marketplaces, etc., then that's the right area. What you get from this 3 months program, which starts in April, is you get a $50,000 grant from Clayton. We will run you through a 3 months program. You get coaching, mentoring from industry experts. You will meet a number of investors that are interested in investing in startups. And again, just a reminder, it's going to be run out of Singapore, but it's obviously also probably a bit remote. And Singapore is really a great hub also for investors. So if you're raising money, there are a lot of funds in Singapore. So that's the Clayton program. Actually, we are just closing the application. So if you want to apply, do it over the weekend. Next week we start with selecting. The second program is the Franklin Templeton program. It's a program that is for Franklin Templeton. Franklin Templeton has actually 1.5 trillion under management. It's in the top 20 of the biggest asset managers in the world. And it's a 2-year program starting in June, July. And we are really looking at startups that are working on solutions in the investment management space, so traditionally the robo-advisors or companies that have developed solutions that will help to increase alpha for Franklin Templeton. Operational efficiency, always a big topic. Client experience, we talked about it today. That's another area where we're looking for startups. And also distribution and product, another area that we're looking for startups. So here, what do you get? You're getting $150,000 investment, seed investment by Franklin Templeton. And again, the whole concept of coaching, mentoring, workshops, and also collaboration opportunities with one of the largest asset managers in the world. So also here, applications are open now, so please do apply if you're interested. That's it already. If you want to follow us, I mean, for those that are in here, just talk to me. But you can follow us on LinkedIn, on Twitter, or just traditional way. You just drop us an email, singapore@f10.global, and you can reach out to me. No matter whether you're a startup, an investor, maybe a mentor, or a corporate partner like the ones that we have, or new ones like SCB TechX.
Thank you, Jonas. Yeah. Your program is very interesting for the fintech space in Thailand. So this is a great opportunity for us to apply for this program. And okay, so I think that will be the end of the session. So the people that will be looking online, right? So we will end of the session. But people here in the venue, so you can enjoy beer and also pizza over there. And then we can talk more about the question or anything that you want to share with our panelists or anyone here. Thank you for your, and sorry for any technical issue that we faced during the online session. Thank you.
Thank you.